I'm Beth and this is Clay. We're co-publishers of the Newnan Times-Herald. Clay's also the managing editor, and I oversee more of the day-to-day business operations.
We became co-publishers in 2017. Before then, Beth was proofreading and I was covering public safety, which I still do.
But he lets me take the late shifts because I'm more of a night owl.
Prior to moving back in 2013, we were living in Western Massachusetts. I was working at a recording studio. Beth was a full-time mom and glass blower. We decided to move back to be closer to our family and our community.
There was a lot I missed about working in the newspaper business. In fact, my first paying job was when I was about 5 years old. My dad built me a little wooden box to stand on so I could reach the inserter machine. He always said that child labor laws didn't apply to family.
One of the best parts about working at a newspaper is that you get a backstage pass into how your community operates. For someone that's curious about how things work, there's no better job.
And the more we learn about our community, the more we want to be involved.
We've learned what it takes to make this town work and work well. And the answer is you, our friends, neighbors, and fellow citizens. The Newnan Times-Herald is currently the oldest continuous business in Coweta County. We began publishing in April 1865, becoming the first newspaper to resume publishing after the end of the Civil War. In 1936, E.W. Thomason and James Jefferson Thomason came to Newnan from Carroll County and began publishing the Newnan Times. 11 years later, the Thomason family purchased the Herald and printed the first edition of the Newnan Times-Herald on December 24, 1947. Always keeping an eye on the future, we launched our website in 1996, well before it was an industry-wide standard. In 2005, we purchased Newnan Coweta magazine, which celebrated its 25th anniversary last year. In 2015, the Newnan Times-Herald celebrated its 150th anniversary, while looking forward to the next 150 years.
We have a great staff, and we've never been more needed than we are today. Our reporters spend more than 30 hours a month covering local government meetings that the average citizen may not even realize are happening. We are part of this community. We not only work here, we live here, shop here, and we care about Newnan and Coweta County, and we see the value in having a local newspaper.
Our paper ensures the voices of Coweta County are heard, and that our community's history is accurately recorded. We can't write about news that doesn't happen. We're here to chronicle tomorrow's news today.
Like most newspapers, we've had to do a little bit of readjusting, and I would say that we're having to do more with less, and it's been a little bit of a struggle trying to do that and still maintain our core principles.
Between our full-time, part-time staff and the volunteers that we have out in the community who readily send us information, photos, it keeps a great synergy between the paper and the people it represents.
Yeah, we only print a newspaper twice a week, but we're still constantly updating information on our website. So if there's breaking news, Clay sends out the mass email blast, and we've got it up on the website as soon as we're able to confirm from reputable sources the facts of the situation.
Because over the last 8 years, we've watched our online audience grow, and that was a big transition from when we first started. Just in 2013, we had a few thousand Facebook followers. Now we've got around almost 50,000. So it's just a matter of combining your old school strategies and new school strategies to make sure that you're reaching everybody in the same reputable way that you have for years.
A local newspaper is vital to make sure that people know how their tax dollars are being spent, what's going on in their everyday lives, the events that's going on around them, and how their community is faring in these challenging times. I would probably say that there are a few institutions more important in everyday lives than the local newspapers, because people have to know what's going on where they live.
I love putting a newspaper together. I love holding the newspaper. And this is no subtle brag about my design, but I do like looking at it on a page, having it on a page, holding it in your hand. And I know people still clip out their obituaries, you know, their loved ones, and we're there for that keepsake, because people aren't going to print an obit off of a website, but they'll clip out the one in the newspaper.
You know, other times I've gone places and I'll have written like a promotional article, like this event is happening, and I'll get there and someone told me like, oh, I only knew this event was happening because I read it in the newspaper, and you know, here they are, that person wouldn't have been there if I hadn't written, you know, my little thing on it. I know that the newspaper is, you know, just spreading information and helping other people connect. You know, if that writing hadn't gone out, just these connections wouldn't have been happening, whether it's the guy, you know, getting some donations, people, maybe even people attending council meetings or just attending events.
Without a local newspaper, people would most likely have about 2 other choices for local news sources, and that would be the Atlanta media, which only comes down here when something huge happens that will provide a quick and easy ratings boost. The other option is social media, which is really better at spreading rumors and misinformation than it is actually getting facts out there. Because we live here and have ongoing relationships with the people we tend to cover on a weekly, if not daily basis, we have the ability to give more thoughtful coverage to the events that we show up and write about. But we have to be able to look people in the eye after the story publishes. Regardless of how bad the news is, if we write solid, fact-based stories, then I know I can go to bed every night knowing that we did the right thing. And because of the consistency with which we've covered our community, we're able to make connections between people and stories that might otherwise go unnoticed. So when something big comes up, chances are we've already been following it behind the scenes for days or weeks, sometimes even months before it actually breaks. For example, in 2018, when the National Socialist Movement and Antifa rally came to Newnan, we wrote about it from the moment the permit was approved by City Council. We were there in the crowds, moving between the barriers to thoroughly document what really happened in order to avoid the inevitable spin from either side. Something like this is the perfect opportunity for propaganda. But having unbiased journalists in the mix who knew the key players and knew where to be to get the real story made all the difference in our coverage versus the other guys who just dropped in for an easy ratings boost. Another story I feel a particular passion for is the removal of coal ash from the unlined ponds at Plant Yates in the western part of the county. Georgia Power makes this information available on its website, but it's buried, and not a lot of people have the time or persistence to go digging for this kind of information. We're keeping an eye on it to make sure that Georgia Power is held accountable for all the toxins that they're dumping into our environment. But not everything we cover focuses on conflict. We have a thriving art scene in Newnan and Coweta County, and sometimes that gets us national coverage that began in the Times-Herald. For example, the installation of oversized portraits by Rhode Island artist Mary Beth Meehan got us on the cover of the New York Times. Her portraits put Newnan on the map for something positive, and we covered it first. It's fair to admit that most of our sources are public record. They're all easily accessible by any individual with some free time and a decent internet connection. What makes us a valuable resource is not only do we go digging for the information, but we verify the accuracy of the facts that we find and find multiple sources of relevant information in order to give the reader a well-rounded package of facts from which they can draw their own conclusion. It's hard enough being an engaged citizen without having to do all the research yourself. We want to make it easier for people to know what's going on within their government and community so that they can find things that they're passionate about and become more involved with their own community. This applies to everything from elected positions to canned food drives. We're aiming to be the one-stop shop for everything that's going on in our community, and I think we're doing just that.
In 2015, we implemented our paywall. It was a decision that wasn't made lightly, but it was one that we felt was necessary to ensure the future of our company. What we do is an essential service to our community that we want to continue to provide, because everyone benefits from having a reliable hometown news source.
The Newnan Times-Herald has been with this community through good times and bad, through the 1918 pandemic, through the 2020 pandemic, and we're still here for you now.
Local news has never faced challenges like we're facing in today's current climate, but with your help, we can ensure quality community news coverage for years to come.
Consider supporting your trusted local newspaper, the Newnan Times-Herald, by donating or subscribing. You put your faith in us for so many years, now we're putting our faith in you.